Okay, so the rest of my front yard is a work in progress by far. So we'll start with the big magnolia tree. There's one there and one over there. Those were here when we bought the house, along with back there is a viburnum. I don't think it's a native viburnum, but I don't do anything to it because it has these little flowers all over it. And I know the native one would too, but if this one is thriving and it's already mature and to this size, covering my air conditioner, I'm not going to take it out because, I mean, it's serving its purpose. This gives bees something as a food source in the winter. And the flowers are so fragrant. They're so tiny, but they're amazing. Let's see. Over here, things are a little wild right now. Don't pay attention to those. I tried to plant something that didn't go right. In this bed, I have quite a few things. So this, I don't know if this is part of it or not, but this might be part of the twin flower. I have twin flowers that I cut back. I'm waiting to see if, and I hope they come back in the spring. I have St. John's wort all along here. That will eventually create a nice little dense ground cover. This is a porterweed that I will cut back when the winter's over. I'm not gonna, if you cut anything back too soon, it forces new growth. And then if we get another freeze, that's just gonna freeze off too. So you're better off protecting the plant and leaving your cutbacks till the end of winter. And then, like, as you see, I like my logs. They're not always perfectly placed because my daughter comes out here and looks for snakes and stuff, so I don't care. But yeah, and then there's some coreopsis that I don't think is the native, but I leave it because it comes up by itself. There's some muley grass there, some more St. John's wort, and there's a bunch of twin flower in here that I'm just hoping comes back. So you will notice a bright contrast, stark contrast, between my neighbor's yard and my yard, because that's due to clover. I seeded my whole, this little tiny area is literally how much front yard I have right here, all the way, see, that's my little leaf pile, to our fence right there. It's kind of like a pie shape. But my experiment, and I'm hoping to do it on the other side as well, was to grow clover in this area, because as you see in the winter, there's no comparison to green grass, to grass, because I don't do anything to this. No pesticides, no herbicides, no fertilizers, nothing. It feeds the soil. It has blooms in the spring for the pollinators. Yeah, so I mean, I know it's not native, but I had to kind of waver between all native ground cover and keeping my HOA happy. And not all Florida native ground covers stay green all the time. So that was my solution. But if you look, I do have baby frog fruit plants scattered about. There's some native, I am really batting 1,000. I can't think of any names. Blue mist flower. Blue mist flower. Is that it? I think so. But there's a bunch of those little plants. They're part of the iris family. So in the spring they will bloom pretty blue mist all in this area. And if you look really closely, I did another reseeding of the clover because it didn't take in some spots, and I have so much seed that I figure, let's see if it takes in the winter. But in the spring or the summer when it rains and I don't have to waste my water bill trying to get this to germinate, I will come back out here, and if none of this takes, I will plant some bigger plants of frog fruit or sunshine mimosa or something else that, you know, makes it look nice. But I mean, when you step back, it really does look nice, and it's no mow, very little upkeep. And this I planted in the end of the summer. Yeah. So on this side of the garden, or the front yard, I should say, I planted a little stand of something here. It kind of changes depending on the season. I had mums in there that I'm gonna cut all back, but there's a bunch of coneflower that's getting bigger. I'm hoping they all bloom next year. This one will bloom this year. I'm excited. I grew a hedge of basil in the spring and summer. It kind of went to the fall, but I let my neighbors pick the basil as they walked by. There was so much of it, so that was part of my foodscape. Technically, coneflower could be considered a foodscape plant because it's medicinal, herbal, and ornamental. So, as you see, there's no clover on this side of the yard, but that's okay. This is I actually did this, not the frost. See that heat lamp? Well, for one, this is a miracle berry tree. It'll be just fine. It's still alive. But I was overzealous with the amount of heat I gave it during the frost, and I cooked the leaves. So sometimes it's just better to leave stuff alone. Or, yeah, be hands off. And it would have been better. But it's fine. Whatever. So I'm so excited about this because in my HOA suburban front yard, I am growing cabbage, carrots, leeks, onions, garlic, and sugar snap peas. And I think it is beautiful. Ooh. In the spring, this is a more well-defined area because, you know, the grass is greener and I'll edge it a little more. I just put a fresh coat of leaves down, so it's kind of, you know, going across the border. But this is my little, I don't know, wave, I call it. But yeah, in this bed, I literally have 5 or 6 different types of food growing in this small space. This is what, about 3 feet wide by 15 feet long. So I mean, it really doesn't take much footprint to grow a lot of vegetables. And the good thing about cabbage is that they do sell ornamental cabbage, so it is ornamental. But just look how pretty that is. And the garlic, leeks. Oh, it's so pretty, so pretty. And this little trellis I made out of wood from my grandma's orchid tree. We thought she was going to lose it, so I took some of the branches and I made something out of it just in case we had nothing left of it, but it survived. So yeah, this is this bed. And then a little tip I learned: if you grow garlic along your garden beds, along the borders, it helps keep out things like rabbits and moles and voles and squirrels, not so much, they just jump over it, but rabbits for sure. And I did have a big rabbit problem, armadillos too, and then I started doing that. Let me just pan out so you can see it. So this is, I would consider, my most successful foodscape bed because everything in this bed is edible. I just love it. And you know what? I don't want my yard to look like everyone else's yard in my neighborhood. I am far from cookie cutter, grass loving Americana. So yeah. And then this is the other magnolia tree my front door. And then this, I extended this bed around. It looks kind of disjointed because part of it is covered in leaves, part of it is planted. After all this flowers in the spring, I plan on just composting the whole area and then replanting. But I grew lots of really pretty flowers and greens. Like if you let these, so all of these are mustard greens, 2 different types, I think. If you let these go to flower, they produce such pretty yellow dainty flowers, and they just add that cottage garden effect. So that's kind of what I was going for here. There are things like coreopsis growing. There was a bunch of zinnias and cosmos, and there was basil. I'm gonna redo the basil in the spring. Different types of basil too. So I mean, this is another portion of my foodscape. Here's some more of that tatsoi or bok choy. I will say up here the soil is not as rich, so these didn't do as well, but they still produced. I have, oh look, that is, I think, a cilantro. I had cilantro back here before. I do have leeks growing here, more coreopsis. That is a mess of a corner. It's way too shaded for most plants, so I plan on putting a fountain there. Just haven't decided when or with what money. This is my trellis full of Confederate jasmine. It gets really, pretty white fragrant flowers in the spring. I plan on putting a bench in there. Just haven't done that yet either. Oh look, this is a coreopsis too, and it's actually going to bloom. That's unheard of right now. Sweet, that'll be nice. Over here we have a lot more greens. You see there's tiny greens too. So they're gonna be in all different stages. More leeks. And I mean, leeks and onions and garlic, they all have a grassy like texture. So when you add them into something like a mixed border of things, no one's like gonna know that you're growing those in your front yard. More flowers. This is some curly kale or curly mustard that just grew up. I left it there. A random carrot. A blanket flower. I tried to pick out all the blanket flower out of this bed because it was taking over. And blanket flower is beautiful, but it can be quite aggressive if you let it self-seed. And then I do have lots of yarrow growing up in here. That's a pretty white flower in the spring and summer. And then this ugly thing was my pretty cranberry hibiscus, but it got killed by the frost and I haven't cut it back yet. So I will be doing that shortly, because you should leave some things, but some things I just can't stand. And then this plant is another coral honeysuckle. It was the first one I installed. When I cut back this hibiscus, you'll be able to see it much better. Maybe I'll add a picture of it once I'm done. But in the spring, this attracted the most hummingbirds I've ever seen in my life. Oh, it was so gorgeous and so fun to watch. I highly recommend. That's native to Florida. And you can teach your kids to drink the honey out of the flowers. That's what my daughter likes to do. Anyway, so yeah, that is my front yard in the first week of January 2023. Oh, and those are more viburnums over there. So those will be staying. Anyways, all right, well, thank you for watching. Have a good day.